Do you know what's the best thing about summers in Berlin? We don't have a beach. People go to lakes like it's a 70s slasher movie. And lakes have trees, and trees have shadow, and shadow is good for your fresh tattoo. If you live in a beautiful sunny place near the sea and you're reaching for a new piece, you don't have to wait until the fall. Don't worry, just take a plane and come here. You can have some fun during the weekend, which here lasts until Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, then a day or two of recovery, and then boom, new tattoo. Click the link in the description below and fill in the booking form.
Hola, Pato. I usually never stop recording, but my stomach was growling so bad that I needed to make a pit stop and get some cake. You know, my wife and my son baked this cake. It's crazy. My son is not even 3 years old and he knows better how to cook than me. I'm a complete disaster. Was never taught, I was never really allowed in the kitchen, not because I'm a boy, but because we had a so tiny kitchen that really not even 2-3 people would feed at the same time. So my wife does all the cooking home. And the other day, I left the studio quite late and I called and asked her like, hey, by any chance, is there any leftovers for me? And she was like, oh no, I'm super sorry. Like, I did not know you were coming. I just cooked for me and I did. And no, you can fix yourself something. And my brain went like, no way. So I told her like, I think I'm gonna stop, grab a quick pizza, and then be on my way home. Ready to enter a restaurant and have the saddest pizza of history. I just walk a corner from Miragana, step into this amazing restaurant, shout out Fratelli La Bionda, I think it's called, super nice Italian joint in Bergman Kids. And I find my friend Sophie, sitting there, Sophie Lee from AK, sitting with one of the new girls, I think the newest resident of AKA, Angelica. And they're both like sitting in a table and they go like, the fuck dude, come sit with us. And I asked them like, can I sit with you? And I ate a pizza. Meanwhile, we were all chatting and drinking some Aperol Spritz. I think today is gonna be like a name drop heavy episode. So I think I'm gonna put in the description below a section where you can find links to everyone's work, so that you know who am I talking about the whole time. So yeah, it's always amazing to catch up with Sophie, and it was great to have the opportunity for the first time to talk a little bit to Angelica. I knew of her, we had crossed paths several times, but I had never had the chance to sit down in a quiet environment. It's always in an event at AKA and it's insane. And we chatted a little bit. I knew that she's friends with Servadio. I knew that she has an impressive back piece done by him. I did not know much more than that. And we had a fascinating conversation about how they met, how they lived together, how they ended up being part of the same crew, how she got a start on tattooing. And in the meantime, I'm kind of registering. Every time I have conversations like this, now I'm applying the filter of like, would this work? If there would be a camera here, would this be a compelling conversation? And I think that one really was. So I hope at some point when I get my shit together and I'm able to invite people to sit with me and chat a little bit, I hope that we're able to sit down with her and replicate a little bit that conversation. And of course, to sit down with Servadio, who reached out after the episode in which I mentioned him talking about, you know, the person that inspired my work, not only my work, but a whole generation of tattooers. So after that conversation, I left things at that, like, oh, I hope that someday I have the chance to sit with her and with him, and this will be part of the interview part of the show. And Then a couple of days after, I'm at the table show with a ton of people, and two friends are having a conversation, and one of them is relatively fresh into tattooing, and the other one is like a really experienced, accomplished tattooer. And he was asking her, or they were chatting about the time that he had asked how did she get her voice, right? And I'm following a lot of intuition to put these episodes together. It feels almost like the universe is guiding me in the directions that I need to tackle topics and the timing of it all. So I went like boom, boom. Oh yeah, true that. I had spoken in an episode about potentially one day speaking about the influence that Servadio had on my work, but I did not know how to make that an episode. And all of a sudden there we were, that question, how did you get your voice? And I realized like these two had to be together, right? So for the most part, wow, 6 minutes in, shit, it's gonna be a long one, sorry guys. So the early work that I used to do for the first 5 years of tattooing, like the first 1.5 or 2 almost don't count. You're practically only trying to figure out technique and placements and equipment and all that jazz. But after that, once you feel a little bit more comfortable and you're able to start putting a little bit of intention behind the tattoos, and also your customer base allows you to, I think all the things that make me, or most of the things that make me, were already there, right? You had the influence of medieval religious painting, and you had the long faces and the straight noses and the blue dots on the cheeks and the sad characters and the fascination with dogs and leaning obviously towards figuration and not so much abstraction. All those elements were there, but it was a very, very graphic style, very clean, very bold, very sharp, with very crisp textures, or very smooth textures and very crisp lines, right? And I think I just had this was essentially what I used to draw, but cleaned up, so that it would work in my opinion as a tattoo, right? I think I was chasing those crispy, perfect lines to prove myself that I could make it technically, that my technique was on point essentially. And then I landed on a point where I was truly happy with the outcome of the tattoos. Not only the way the designs were, but also how they translated into the skin, how they healed, how they looked over time when they lost a little bit of the initial contrast, how they looked surrounded by other tattoos. But that cleaning process kind of like tempered with my ability to express myself, right? So all of a sudden, so this was maybe that period between 2012 and 2017, 18, something like this. Maybe a little bit before that, one day I stumbled upon the new work of Michele Servadio, because I knew the old one, and all of a sudden, one day, after years and years of chasing, like any other tattooer, doing good lines and solid black and whatnot, he threw everything out of the window and started playing around with super lo-fi rotary machines that didn't allow him to make these like crispy and solid lines, but kind of build them up and have these like really textured lines made out of other lines, right? What we know today as the base of this new expressionist movement, right? I had never seen that. There were, of course, a lot of examples of people that were exploring expressionism, but always from the perspective of abstraction, right? And no one had brought that line sensibility and those textures into drawings of things. So I thought it was, first of all, it looked amazing. And it seemed to be almost like a natural evolution of his style. He had his, I think he might even still have that as an email address, falsemodigliani@gmail.com, right? So you could see that he had Modigliani as I don't want to say as a maybe as a lighthouse, right? Like the sensibility, especially when it came to human anatomy, portraits and hands and whatnot, was openly very inspired by Modigliani. And then from that point on, he started getting away of that and becoming his own thing. And that, to me, was the most inspiring part of the process, right? How can you love and revere something so much as he did with Modigliani? How can you make that part of your brand and at some point be bold and brave enough to walk away from what made you more or less known and start from scratch, embracing failure and a period of doing work that won't be as good as the one that you used to do, just with the purpose of finding your own voice and putting your ability to express and for people to connect with who you truly are above the aesthetics of the outcome. Okay, familia, no more reading exercises. You know what time it is, I know what time it is. It's donation time. We're of course super thankful if you like, comment, subscribe and share. No complaint there whatsoever. But we also need some money. A man has to eat. That's why we've launched a GoFundMe campaign to collect donations not only for this channel but also to help support my other two projects, New Fob and Hiragana Studio, which are like my babies, and both of them, not one but both of them, are non-profits that support independent tattooers. The work that I do there is pro bono, which is a really fancy way to say for free. So the cool thing about GoFundMe compared to other crowdfunding platforms is that it's not all or nothing. This means that you don't need to reach the campaign's goal to have access to the donations. So every donation that you send minus a little percentage for the platform will find its way to us and help us sustain these projects. Click the link in the description below, read a bit more about the campaign and help us continue the good work. So the thing that fascinated me the most, besides the results that he was getting with the new style, was the work ethic and the commitment to an artistic pursuit. At that time, tattooers were super conveniently distancing themselves from being legitimate artists, right? It was very easy to then get away with tracing the work of another person and just downloading images and photoshopping them so that they would translate into a proper stencil. There was no holding yourself up to that standard. So it was the first time that I saw someone who had a great voice that willingly moved away from it to achieve something even better and cooler. And I thought at the time that it had to do with the work being vaguely reminiscent of Modigliani, which I thought it was like hardcore, but I respected the shit out of that. But short after that, we received an application for a position of apprentice. And when I say we, I mean me and the folks at 1928. I was working there and also managing the studio, so I was kind of responsible for new hirings and all that stuff. So for now, that tattooer will remain nameless. But yeah, super talented kid. Huge fan of Servadio. Has grown to become an amazing tattooer. A really, really accomplished tattooer. But some of his mannerisms and aesthetics were too inspired by Servadio. And when I say inspired, I mean much more than Servadio was inspired by Modigliani. It was somehow too close. So much that still nowadays people think that the tattoos that this apprentice gave me are old work from Servadio. So that showed me that perhaps Servadio was not walking away from what he considered to be too close to Modigliani. Maybe it was the beginning of people starting to get super inspired by his work and kind of, I don't know, just taking some of the iconic trademarks of his voice and his style, right? And very graciously, because I could see a couple of interactions between them, and I always got a little bit awkward at the time, thinking like, shit, it's gonna go down, and Servadio, rightfully so, will say like, dude, what the fuck? This is so close to what I do. Never ever heard a bad thing coming out of his mouth. He was only encouraging. Ever since, it has become obvious that that's his MO. I've only heard good stories of people that were inspired by his work and started tattooing because of him, and were obviously too inspired by his work. He's been nothing but helpful and has been open to giving advice, even sharing tricks with equipment, even sharing equipment and giving them presents, and showing them how to get started. So I don't know, at the time it blew my mind, but it showed me how easy it is to just be fascinated by something, being exposed to someone's work, and having that work all of a sudden unlocking a door that allows you to grow, and how easy it was to just be lost behind the shadow of that work, right? And be so attracted to it that it somehow seeds in the back of your head, and every time you try to draw, it just comes out, right? And you try to shake it off, which is what we tried with the apprentice, and it doesn't leave you. It grabbed you so strongly that even if you try to walk away from it, you cannot. And still nowadays, I feel like he's struggling a little bit. I don't know that he struggles, but I know that people still give him shit sometimes. And yeah, it's something that if you don't shake at the beginning, it might be impossible to shake off further down in your career, and then you will always be that person that is too closely inspired by the person that inspired you to start, right? So that story showed me how to approach me building in a very conscious way my approach. And instead of just taking the things that I was fascinated about from Michele's work and just flowing, I had to make a very active effort to stay away from those things and define myself with a different voice by finding almost like the opposite side of the spectrum from his work, right? He was full of raw emotion and was dark and gritty and textured and had gotten rid of the lines and was gray and industrial and screamed winter. And I decided that yes, the gesture-driven lines were exactly what I needed to set myself free from the burden of learning technique, but I would approach it from the opposite side. I would be line-based and get rid of all the textures for the most part. I would be full of color. I would scream summer and south, and it would be lightful, and it would be, yes, with a melancholic touch, but for the most part way more loose and fun, so that we could both exist on different sides of the spectrum. That's how innovative Michele's work was, that I thought not two people could exist inside the same universe except if we were at the opposite sides of it, right? Anything darker than my work was too close to his. Anything that was like my work, but I don't know, with a industrial setting instead of a Mediterranean one, was too close to his work. I could never imagine that there would be 150 shades of Servadio in between him and me. I don't know, like 5-6 years after that, and that was a really difficult process for me. So I defined who I was. At first, trying to stay away from a lot of things that I really liked in his work and that I found cool. And afterwards, I saw a lot of people that were just getting dangerously close to his work again. And people who were clearly overstepping, not getting into trouble and continuing to have like a super fruitful career. So every now and then I would get that little voice in my head and go like, yeah, you know, what you do is cool, but it would be a little bit cooler if it was closer to his work. And it has always been really hard to overcome that temptation and know that yes, there's some aspects of his work that I'm fascinated by, but they're not me. And if I cannot shake that temptation off, and I get closer to what he does, the closer I get, the least myself I will be. And that's that reality check, right? When you see your work and you go, wow, it's really me, and you put it next to someone's work who is really his, and you go, yeah, mine is, I don't know if it's that cool. Then it means by logic that you're not that cool, and that fucking hurts, you know. And it's so tempting. Like, maybe if I would just make it grittier, or maybe I would like throw some like heavier religious iconography, then it would get edgier. Like, that's just not who I am. Is who he is, and that's not the things that fascinate me. So overall, I'm really happy that I've managed to always stay clear and of the influences that in a way have brought me where I am, but not so much by following the footsteps, but by defining where I should not step. Servadio is key to understand who I am, not because I copied his way of working, but because of defining the space that I could occupy, because it wasn't occupied by him first. And I think this is something that might be really useful for younger tattooers. When you are coming up, there's people that inspire you not only to start, but also to chase finding your own voice. And it's normal. At first, your work reeks of other artists, but it gives you an undeserving amount of success, because you're essentially finding or presenting and showcasing the fruit of someone else's investigation and experimentation and stylistic conclusions, right? And the more success you have with that, the harder and harder and harder it becomes to step away from it, to find your own voice. And you keep on lying to yourself and going like, well, you know, I just started, I need some more time, because I just need to get this thing going, and then when I'm a little bit more successful, I will step back, I will investigate in a different direction, I will walk away from this. But the more audience you build that come to you for that, the more difficult it is to then step away from it. And then at a point it becomes your brand, and then at a point it becomes the way you pay your rent and the reason why you get as much money as you get, and then you don't get in trouble and no one calls you out, maybe every now and then, a comment in the internet or two. But the more you wait, the more difficult it is. I think in another episode we will talk about doing that at the highest point of your career and being able to really go, I don't know, full on kamikaze and just go, fuck it. I don't care how successful I've become. I need to start from scratch and find my own voice. It can be done, but it's really painful. I've had an example close to me of someone who just recently did that, and it's been a few months of hardcore struggle. And I'm so happy and so proud of her for doing it, and I know that it will just bring good things, but you have to be really brave. And yeah, I think it's better to first figure out who you are and then learn how to make what you do cooler than find something really cool that is not you and then have to give that up to find something that is really you. I don't know if that makes any sense. That's all I got today. As always, if the 20 of you are still there and still following me, please make sure that you leave a comment, that you like and subscribe and check the GoFundMe. All these things really help. And that's it for today. I will see you next week.